Hi, welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic. Now, today we're going to look at what has become a very standard Sudoku variation, but I thought that we should do this because I had a heartbreaking email really from Jordan in Arkansas, who commented that he'd had these puzzles on the go for years. And you can see this is, I think he found this on a flight in a magazine. These Sudokus were presented, and he's been trying to solve them using normal Sudoku techniques. He's made a bit of progress on the one on the left, and couldn't even enter a number on the one on the right, and he keeps coming back to them over time, still can't make progress. Now, Jordan, unfortunately, this puzzle, it should have had a few more instructions, because this is called a Windoku. Sort of sounds like something out of Star Wars, but isn't. All that happens in a Windoku is you get some extra information from the grayed out areas. These grayed areas here are 3x3 blocks that cannot contain repeated digits. So in effect there are 13 3x3 blocks in a Windoku, whereas normally you only get 9. And that leads to a few extra techniques that you can use for the solve. Now, I had to choose a puzzle for today's edition, and you can try the puzzle just by clicking on the link under the video, but I decided rather than take these puzzles off Jordan, because I think he should now he knows the restriction, we should leave him to solve those on his own. I chose one from a few years ago, 2015's World Sudoku Grand Prix final. Now the reason I decided to do this is that I could get an idea as to how quickly the best solvers in the world were solving the puzzle. And it might not come out very well on the screen here, but you can see there's the Windoku is number 4. It's a puzzle I think that's being set by Jan Mrozowski from Poland, and we've done a couple of his puzzles before and they've been excellent, but you can see here in the time increment going from the classic Sudoku to the Windoku, this puzzle that we're about to look at takes the world's best solvers about 4 minutes. Now that is absolutely terrifying. And we are not going to get it done in 4 minutes. The first thing I want to do is just look at this puzzle. This isn't the puzzle we're going to do today, but this is just to show you how the Windoku restriction works, and to point you in the direction of some additional restrictions that may not at first be apparent. Now obviously, you know, knowing that the grey areas must contain the 1s and 9s, that allows some quite intensive logic that you can do once you get anything in and around these grey areas. But there are some additional things to think about here. So let me switch to highlighting in colour here. Oh, I didn't mean to highlight that one. Great. This square. Let's have a look at this square. Now, if I highlight some squares in red here, let's think about what do we know about those 9 squares that I've just highlighted. And the answer is that they must also form a 1 to 9 block of some order, and you can see that because if we know this grey area contains the numbers 1 to 9 and this grey area contains the numbers 1 to 9, we know there'll be 3 lots of 1 to 9 in these 3 columns, so these 3 cells are also going to be the numbers 1 to 9. And we can do the same, obviously, I suppose. Let's use green this time in these squares. So we know these squares are also, the green squares will also be 1 to 9 in some order. Now if that's true for those columns there, it must also be true for the rows. So let's show you some more areas which are restricted, and let's use blue for the last. These areas are all 1 to 9. And finally, if we stare hard at the grid, we can also spot that we also have these white squares. Now these white squares, believe it or not, also form a 1 to 9 array. So you could not have a repeated cell or a repeated number in the, oh, I just pressed the wrong button there. Let's go to normal, let's go to this square here and ask ourselves whether it's possible, for example, for those 2 squares to be the number 4, and it's not. It's not, because these white squares must form or must be individually the numbers 1 to 9. You cannot have a repeated number within them. And you may say, well, how can that possibly be true? Well, let's just think about it quickly for a moment. So we know that the green squares must contain a 4. So where's the 4 going to go in the green squares? Well, the answer is it can't go here and it can't go here because of the 4s we're hypothesizing, so it's only going to be able to go in those 3 squares. Let's do the same thing for the reds. We know there's a 4 in the reds somewhere, so where can it go? Well, it can only go here. Look at that, you get repeated 4 in row 5. So this is part of the logic that allows us to deduce things like this. And for the harder Windoku puzzles, it can be the clue to getting an extra digit. But without further ado, let's have a look at the real puzzle from today. Okay, so here's the puzzle. Now, what I'm not going to try and do today is to attempt to do this in 4 minutes. That would just lead to embarrassment. But do have a go yourselves. Yeah, you can find the link, as I said, under the or in the video description. And what I will try and do, though, is to the extent I can, I'm going to try and use some of these techniques involving these sorts of areas. So, because I think that they're the hardest things to get your head round when we're looking at these Windoku puzzles for the first time. So let's take a look now. Okay, so where can we place a 2 in this grey area? Now this 2 is very powerful. Obviously it rules out 3 squares. This 2 is quite powerful, rules out these 2, so that's got to be a 2. And ordinarily we would be in a position where we would do that as a result of this 2 we've just placed. But look, this 2 here actually sees this 2 because it shares a grey area. So that means we get to place another digit. Now, great, this is a good example. Let's look at 3s. So we have a 3 here and a 3 here. And again, ordinarily, I could go like this. Now have a look and see if you can see quickly why one of those is not valid. And the reason, believe it or not, is that this 3 sees this 3. Because we talked, didn't we, about how these three cells, these 3 cells, and these 3 cells cannot contain a repeated digit. So this square is not a 3, and that means we can put a 3 into that position. Let's just check whether we can. I guess we could pencil mark 3s down at the bottom there. But I've seen, look, we've got 4s and 4s here, so there's only one place a 4 can go. Which is going to have to be there. And that gives us a 3-4 pair at the bottom. And a 4 into one of these 2 squares here. Now, 5s into one of these 2 squares. But look. Again, we've got a 5 issue here. This cannot be a 5, because if this is a 5, then it's breaking our conditions with 3 cells doing this. So that's not a 5, so this is a 5. Okay, so where now? 6, obviously 6, 6. This square's got to be a 6. That means this square's a 6. 6 is, I suppose, I'm not quite seeing how we can tell where the 6 goes there. Can we do anything? Yes, 6, 6. This must be a 6. Because obviously this is part of a 3-4 pair. Now that means that there is a 6 in either this position or this position. So again, what I'm doing here is the moment I see this, these pencil marks splitting, if you like, a grey area and a white area, I'm actually checking these 3 cells and these 3 cells just to see whether or not I can see anything useful. And I can't in that instance, but these things happen. So where now? This 9 means there's a 9 in one of these two squares. Let's put that in. So 9s are quite restricted now in this block. You can see in this 3 by 3 grey area, in fact, the 9 is locked into one of two squares. And in this sort of top right 3 by 3 area, the 9 is locked into one of those two squares. Okay. So what next? Yeah, I'll show you what we can do. Look, we can use this 9 and this 9, and ordinarily, again, this is why these puzzles are a bit weird to get your head round. We'd look at the interaction of these two digits and we'd sort of go, nah, doesn't look like there's anything clever to do. But this 9 sees this square. So in fact, I think I'm right in saying a 9 can only go into one of those two positions, and therefore we actually get to go 9 here, 6 here. Well, I might have to just pause the video in a moment. One sec. Sorry, quick childcare pause. So now we've got this 6 we've just placed, and this 6, and this 6, and this 6. So straightforward Sudoku, we can place a 6 here. And we may have done all the 6s. Yes, we have. And let's check this column. We've got 1, 5, and 7 to place. So this square must be a 7, because we've got a 1 and a 5 already in the row. In fact, we can do better than that. So now we need a 1 and a 5 into these two positions here, but this square sees this 5. So that must be a 1, and this must be a 5. And this, if everything's, this should be a 2 just to complete this 3 by 3 block. And therefore we need a 9 into one of these two squares within the grey block, so that gives us a 9 here. And this should be, what is it going to be, a 3, I think. And that's nice, because we've got 3, 3, 3 in one of these two squares, but this 3 means that's a 3. So we've done this grey area. Maybe we could do more with this grey area here. We still need to place a 5 in this grey area, and you can see that can now only go here. And we now need 1, 4, no, not 1, 4, in fact 1, 7 and 8 into these positions, and we have a 1. So there's a 1. These two must be 7 and 8. It's probably a way of resolving that, but I'm not seeing it. This is a 7 and an 8 obviously as well. 7, 8, 7, 8. So now these two squares must be 7 and 8, mustn't they? Because in this 3 by 3 block we've not put 7 and 8 in yet. So that's nice, because this can't be a 9 anymore. That means this must be the 9, this must be a 4. Now this must be a 9. Again, that's simple Sudoku, nothing clever there. 4s must be here, simple Sudoku again. Now, where can a 4 go in this 3 by 3 block? It can't go here because of the 4 there. So that's a 4. Looks a bit fruitless to... And this must be 2 or 5, and this must be 2 or 5. So let's use different notation. That gives us a 2, 5 pair there, look. And into these two blocks we still need to put 1 and 8. Now we must be able to resolve that. Yeah, 8's there. So this is an 8, and this is a 1. Therefore this is an 8. On this side we still need a 1 in here, so that's... Oh, no, sorry, that was terrible. 9 here, and 7, I think. 7. Okay, now we need a 7 into one of these two squares. Now, let's just highlight that and take a quick stare to see if we can resolve this anywhere. So again, I'm scanning these squares here. So obviously 2, 5 and 9. This square can't be a 2. 2 here as well. So the 2 is locked into one of those two squares in this central 3x3 block. Ha! Look at that, it's really beautiful. So now, let me just go through that again. I'm sure you all got it, but I was looking at these two squares, noticing that they are 2 and 5. And therefore I know that I can't see another 2 and 5 in any of these squares. And in particular, this square can't be a 2. Now, combining that with this 2 locks a 2 into one of these two squares, and that actually resolves where the 2, 5 go in this block. So, sort of, it reverses back into itself, and we get 5 there, which means this is a 5. That resolves where the 7 goes. This must be a 5 now. And I think we're on the home straight, but let's just try and make sure we finish it off reasonably efficiently. So here we need 3, 4 and 8, and we've got 8 and 8. So that's an 8 here, 3 and a 4 into these two squares. I'll just pencil mark that in. And that means we must need 1, 2 and 7 into the grey areas here. So this is a 1 by normal Sudoku. This is a 7 and this is a 2. Therefore this is a 7. This can't be a 4 because of this 4. We need a 3 and a 4 to complete the row, so that's got to be in that order, I think. That resolves the 4 and the 3 here, which means this is a 4 as well. Okay, so still not, this is the only grey block now we haven't finished. I assume I'm just missing something, so let's come back to that. Anyway, I'm 1, 2 and 8 into these squares. So this must be a 1, and 2 and 8 into these two positions. So can we use the trick here to resolve this? Possibly, but I'm not seeing how. Now the other thing to note about this digit, of course, is that this digit is in a sort of magic square with loads of extreme squares like this, so we could check those. But I'm not seeing a 2 or an 8 in any of them, so can't see how to resolve that. Right, we're going to have to do it the normal way then. So 3 and 9, yeah, okay, that's a 9. Therefore this is a 3. We still need to place 1 into one of these two squares. Again, I'm just checking to see whether I can use any of the corner constraints, because I did say I was going to try and do it that way. Bother. Okay, well let's use row 2 then. This is going to be an 8 because of the 7 here. 8, 8, 7. Well, this is 7, this is 8, this is 7. That means this is 8, this is 2, 2 and 1. 1 here, and if I haven't made an error, this should be a 9. Let's click check, and it's all good. So that is how to do the Windoku. I hope that was a bit of an interesting one. And Jordan, I am very sorry that there were no instructions in that puzzle you saw all those years ago. If you enjoy the channel, please do subscribe. We really appreciate it. And we'll be back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.